This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Isai. Bruchim Abom to the Kollel Agad de Pirka here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. Parshas Seitzei. One of the tefillos that we focus on during the Yom Noraim, during the Asar Simei Tshuva. It's a tefillah that we say in a different version on a regular tainus, but we alter the version for the Asar Simei Tshuva. We say Avinu Malkeinu Kasveinu B'Sefer HaZechuyos. B'Sefer Zechuyos. Avinu Malkeinu Kasveinu B'Sefer Zechuyos. We say, our Father, our King, write us in the book of Merit. And this is a tefillah we say every year. We say it along with many other tefillos. Ribbono Shel Olam, inscribe us in the book of life, in the book of health. We have many, many requests, but this particular request should certainly draw our attention to try to understand what is the meaning of this request. And this question was enunciated by one of the great Rosh Yeshivas of Kelm, who I'm not familiar with his life other than I really like his first name. His name is Rav Daniel Muvshavitz. He's one of the great Balei Musar, and he asked the following question. You want to ask Ribbono Shel Olam for a good life? Okay, we understand, that's Biyad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You want to ask Hashem for health? That's Biyad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You want to ask Hashem for Parnasa? That's Biyad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the one thing that would seem rather odd to be asking Hashem is Avinu Malkeinu Kasveinu B'Sefer Zechuyos. Miman of Shach. What do you mean Kasveinu B'Sefer Zechuyos? If you do them, they'll be written. Right? It says Hakol B'Sefer Nechtavim. And if you don't do them, Ribbono Shel Olam cannot manufacture this fake document. You could go to a bureaucrat and have him invent some kind of document that says something Shelo Haya V'lo Nivra. However, to ask Ribbono Shel Olam to write us in the book of merit, Miman of Shach. If you do it, it will be written, and if you don't do it, there's nothing to write. What do you mean, Kasveinu B'Sefer Zechuyos? You got to do it yourself, and if you do the mitzvahs, it will be written. You don't have to ask for it. That was the question of Rav Daniel Muvshavitz. Avinu Malkeinu Kasveinu B'Sefer Zechuyos. Another question we have to try to understand. Al tashlicheni milfanecha Beruach kodshecha al tikach mimeni al tashlicheni. Do not throw me away milfanecha, from before you. What does that mean? Don't throw me away. Where's Hashem going to throw us? In the garbage can, in the trash? Out of a touchdown He's going to throw us for? What are we asking? Al tashlicheni milfanecha, Ribbono Shel Olam, do not throw us away. Marv Rabbi said we come to this week's Parsha, Parshas Seitzei, and this Parsha enjoys a distinction that no other Parsha enjoys, and that is, this week's Parsha has the most mitzvahs of any Parsha in the whole Torah. There are more mitzvahs in Parshas Seitzei than in any other Parsha in the Torah. Do you know how many mitzvahs there are? The Seitzei Tzaddik, Reb Pinchas Menachem Mipiltz, the brother-in-law of the Sfas Emes, Reb Pinchas Menachem Mipiltz, 1849 to 1921, he writes that in this week's Parsha, there are 74 mitzvahs. More than 10% of all the mitzvahs in the Torah are in this week's Parsha. So here it is, it's Chodesh Elul, and we're preparing for the Yom Adin, and the Ribbono Shel Olam is mezakeh us with the Parsha that has more mitzvahs than any other Parsha. And the reason is, says the Seitzei Tzaddik, because we know there's a principle, when you learn about something, it's like you fulfilled it. Anyone who learns about the subject of a carbon oila, it's like you brought the oila. Anyone who learns about the subject of a chatas, it's like you brought the chatas. So, the Ribbono Shel Olam is giving us a great zechiyah. Because here we are, we're only a few weeks away from the Yom Adin, and we don't know what our repertoire has in it. We don't know if we hope we're roiv zechuyos, but what if chas v'shalom we're not? So Ribbono Shel Olam says, just say, all you got to do this week is come to shul, pay attention carefully to the Kriyas HaTorah. When you learn something, it's like you're mekayim it, so you could actually be 60 points in the red, and when you come out after Shabbos morning, you're going to be in the green, as long as you don't schmooze with your friend by davening, and then you're basically hopeless. But, as long as you keep your mouth closed by the davening, you pay attention to Kriyas HaTorah, you could come out in the red, and you walk out of the shul, you're in the green because you were just Mekayim 74 mitzvahs. 74 mitzvahs. Imagine that? All you have to do is pay attention for 30 minutes because Kol ha'oisek b'toras oila kilu hikriv oila. Kol ha'oisek b'toras chatos kilu hikriv chatos. Kol ha'oisek b'Parshas ki Seitzei ki'ilu Mekayim 74 mitzvahs. The Gematria aid, a testimony, because this week's Parsha gives testimony to the glory and the majesty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Rebbeinu Shalom, like we have in the Kriya Shema, you have the big ayin in the Shema, you have the Dalet and Va'ed. So this week's Parsha is a Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shamayim to the unity of Hashem through the 74 mitzvahs. Okay, so Rabbi say if this week's Parsha is what we call the Parsha of mitzvahs, then perhaps in this week's Parsha it gives us the recipe for the procedure to how one goes about fulfilling mitzvahs. So we're going to begin with a very interesting question on a random subject. The subject of the Ari Miklat from last week's Parsha. So you have a guy and he's fixing his roof. Yeah, I hired that guy. So he's fixing his roof and he's knocking something into the roof, and something falls, and Chas v'Shalom, he kills b'shogeg. So the relatives are all fired up. They want to kill the guy. They can't hold themselves back, and they start chasing the guy. They go run after the guy. They're in there, and he's in the getaway car, and they're chasing, and he finally makes it into the Arei Miklat, and all the relatives are standing on the outskirts of the Arei Miklat, and he's on the inside. He's, teasing them. You can't catch me. You can't get me. I'm going to stay here. You'll never get me. You're not going to touch me. If you touch me in here, you're going to be Chayiv Misa. They turn around for a minute. He runs out. He takes out. He gets right back in. He plays with them a little bit. The moment he gets back into the Arei Miklat, he's safe. But now the question is, he wants to leave. He can't take it anymore. Nobody likes to be cooped up inside, indoors, right? So the question is, he knows, he's the only one who knows how to look at the moon and testify that it's Rosh Chodesh. The problem is there's no Bezdin in the Arei Miklat, so he needs to leave the Arei Miklat so that Klal Yisrael can know when Yom Tov is. Or let's say he knows that Yankel owes Beryl $1 billion, and Bezdin needs to summons him. Come testify. Or let's say he knows that Yankel killed Beryl. Or what if he's a general and all of Klal Yisrael needs the guy to save their skin? Klal Yisrael is waging this major battle, and if he doesn't come out of the Arei Miklat, it would be endangering the lives of the entirety of the Jewish people. Says the Gemara, he's not to leave. Eino yotzei misham la'olam, the Gemara Makos says Yiraf and Beis. Eino yotzei loy la'edos mitzvah, not for the testimony of a mitzvah, loy la'edos mamoin, not for the testimony of money, loy la'edos nefashos, not for the testimony of capital cases. Va'afilu Yisrael tzrichim loy, even if the Jewish people need him. Va'afilu starts, he got an email. Tuna fish is only 39 cents a pound. He can't contain himself. You know what kind of mitzvah it is? You know what kind of urge he has to go buy cheap tuna fish? Apparently people consider the price of tuna fish one of the most important aspects of living. If you study Shalshudas conversation, you'll notice that the primary topics of conversation are the price of tuna fish. So this is like a mitzvah. Shein kamayu. Va'afilu kol Yisrael tzrichim loy. Va'afilu sar tzva Yisrael kiyoyev ben tzruya. Eino yotzei misham la'olam. He may never leave the Arei Miklat. Shenemar asher nashama sham tehei dirasai. There he'll live. Sham tehei misasai. He's going to die there. Sham tehei kfurasai. He can't even live after death. He said, I can't. He said, I spent, when I was 4 years old, I bought a plot in Har HaZeisim. I've been waiting my whole life to be buried opposite that. No, you got to be buried in the Arei Miklat. The guy can never leave the Arei Miklat until the Kohen Gadol dies. Come the Achronim, and we're going to start with the Tfaras Yisrael, and they say, how could such a thing be? He can't leave the Arei Miklat to save the life of the Jewish people? Even to save the life of one Jew, he should be allowed to leave. This is not one of the 3 cardinal sins. There are only 3 averos that you're not allowed to violate not to save a life. In other words, the halacha is that human life is paramount, except for when it comes to the 3 cardinal sins. Let's say somebody comes and says, wear this Yugo Boss suit, which is Malay V'Gadish Shatnez, otherwise we're going to kill you. So you put on the suit. Let's say somebody says, speak during Chazar Hashatz or we're going to kill you. So as terrible as it is to speak by Chazar Hashatz, you do not have to give up your life not to talk by Chazar Hashatz. Let's say somebody says, have a conversation bein Gavra LaGavra. Even though the Mishnah Berurah says you're not to speak bein Gavra LaGavra, nevertheless, you don't have to give up your life not to speak bein Gavra LaGavra. So we know human life, Jewish life, is paramount. So how could the halacha say the guy always has to stay in the Ori Miklat, even if all of Klal Yisrael are dependent on him? But we know you're allowed to save your life and violate any mitzvah in the Torah. You're allowed to speak Lashon Hara and save your life. You're allowed to eat treif and save your life. You're allowed to eat nevela and save your life. You're allowed to eat on Yom Kippur and save your life. So why can't the guy leave the Ori Miklat? So you say, he's not saving his own life, he's saving other people's lives. Maybe you're now to violate a mitzvah to save someone else's life. But we know that's not true. We know you're allowed to violate all the mitzvahs to save someone else's life. Are you allowed to violate Shabbos to save somebody's life? Of course you're allowed to violate Shabbos to save someone's life. So ask the Tveris Yisrael, how could the halacha be that if all of Klal Yisrael is dependent on him, he's not to leave the Arei Miklat, but we know you're allowed to violate any mitzvah in the Torah except for the big three to save a life? Yes.
Is it only that he's not? Is there a mitzvah he's not allowed to leave, or if he leaves, then the Goel Adam can kill him?
Oh, so you'll say, what's your name again? Remind me.
Aaron.
And Aaron what?
Kinderlehrer.
Rabbi Aaron Kinderlehrer is saying, well, maybe he wants to suggest a possible taratz, and that is, he is allowed to leave, because to save a life you're allowed to leave. Or perhaps you could even say, let's say to be Mekayim a big mitzvah, let's say like Bris Milah, a very big asay would push off a weaker asay. The only thing is, he won't be able to leave because the Goel Hadam would still be allowed to kill him. So it's not that he's not allowed to leave. He's allowed to leave, but he's jeopardizing his life. Well, the Tveres Yisrael says that he would not be satisfied with this answer because, by the way, and that being the case, he would not be allowed to leave. We're going to see in a minute, because he would be jeopardizing his life.
At his own risk.
But he says it's not mashma that's what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara seems to be saying that the reason why he can't leave is because the Torah is giving a mitzvah saseh for him to be there. Not that he's really allowed to, but then the Goel Adam could kill him anyway. But it implies that the import and the severity of what the Torah says, Sham Tehei, that we're giving a mitzvah saseh, he must be there. Not only because he'd be jeopardizing his life if he leaves, but because the Torah is saying he has to be there. And the question is, even if the Torah does say he has to be there, you should be allowed to violate it.
That's a riot for that.
That what?
He has to be buried there. Once he's dead, he believes he can't kill him.
Right, I hear that.
And if the Kohen Gadol dies, then he doesn't have to be there.
Correct. But if the Kohen Gadol doesn't die, he would have to be. So this is the question. The question is, why do we enforce this mitzvah saseh even in a situation where what? Where he'd be able to save somebody else's life? So let me share with you a few answers to this question. We're going to examine two answers now, and then we're going to, at the end of the share, examine one of the most remarkable comments that I ever saw about anything. Let's begin with the Cheshek Shloimeh. The Cheshek Shloimeh, Rabbi Shloimeh HaKohen Mivilna. And he suggests an amazing answer. He says that he is allowed to leave. You're allowed to leave to save a life. You're allowed to leave to testify. You're allowed to leave to do a mitzvah. When the Gemara says you're not allowed to leave, it means you're not allowed to leave for good. You would think that once you left to save life, so now that I left, I could stay out. Or if I left to testify, now that I'm authorized to leave, I could stay out. Or if I left to give edus, once I leave, I could stay there. No, the Gemara says, Eino yotzei misham la'olam. You can't leave for good. But of course there are circumstances that you can leave temporarily, which are to save someone else's life or to testify. Those would be important enough reasons to violate Asher nashama sham tehei dirasai. What the Gemara means is you can't leave permanently. That even though you've had a temporary heter to leave, you would have to come back in. That's what the Gemara means. Meaning you can't stay out, but you would have to come back in. The Meshech Chochmah has a fantastic take on this. The Meshech Chochmah asks, why can't the guy leave? But Pikuach Nefesh is doicha all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Certainly the Pikuach Nefesh of all of Klal Yisrael, because, by the way, Rabbi Say, when it comes to saving the life of all of Klal Yisrael, sometimes you could even violate the big three to save all of Klal Yisrael. What's the proof? Esther. Are you allowed to commit arayos to save someone's life? No. Are you allowed to commit arayos to save one's own life? No. But what about to save the entirety of the Jewish people? You are allowed to commit arayos. So in that case, why couldn't this gentleman leave the Arei Miklat and save all of Klal Yisrael? So the Meshech Chochmah says a fantastic explanation. Are you allowed to give up your life to save someone else's life? Are you required to give up your life to save someone else's life? No.
His blood is not redder than yours.
Right? Because who said his blood is redder than yours? Are you allowed to give up your life to save someone's life? It's debatable. Really, in the hierarchy, in my personal value system, I need to value that my life is more important than other people's lives. Every individual has the right and the obligation to give paramount importance to their own life. But now the question is, am I allowed to risk my life to save someone else's life? I'm not allowed to give up my life to save someone else's life. Am I allowed to risk my life? More than that, am I obligated to risk my life to save someone else's life? Let's say you see somebody drowning in very treacherous waters. Are you obligated to jump in to save them, or you might be risking your own life? Not for sure. You're a trained lifeguard, but it's dangerous. Are you obligated to risk your life to save someone else's life? This is a very interesting question. Where this comes into what? A vada and a suffix. So you would say, ain't suffix most. On the other hand, but maybe we'll both be saved. But maybe not. Are you allowed to? So you're right, but it's not unanimous. The Hagois Maimoni quotes the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says explicitly that you're obligated to risk your life to save someone's life. By the way, where does this come in? Organ donation. Are you allowed to give up a kidney to save someone else's life? Now maybe you'll say giving up a kidney is not really risking your life. Well, maybe nowadays that's the case. Even though there are stories, what would happen if somebody needed their other kidney? Or what happens if something goes wrong in the procedure? In any procedure, it's always dangerous. But is a person allowed to risk their life? Let's say an organ donation where it's 50-50, where you might not make it off the operating table. Are you allowed to risk your life to save someone else's life? The Yerushalmi paskins, you're obligated to risk your life to save the life of another Jew. But the Rambam and the Rif and the Shulchan Aruch do not bring it down la halacha. And the last Beis Yosef and Choshen Mishpat wonders, why is the Yerushalmi not brought down la halacha? That you're obligated to risk your life to save someone else's life. And the Beis Yosef says, you know why it's not brought down la halacha? It must be, the Bavli argues. The Sma writes, it must be the Bavli argues. And the Sma doesn't say which Bavli argues on the Yerushalmi. And since the Bavli argues on the Yerushalmi, we paskin, you're not allowed to risk your life to save someone else's life. Comes the Meshech Chochmah and he says, the Sma didn't say which Bavli argues on the Yerushalmi. I'll tell you which Bavli argues on the Yerushalmi. This Bavli that says that if the general of the Jewish people is in the Arei Miklat, he's not allowed to leave the Arei Miklat to save someone else's life. This Bavli argues on the Yerushalmi. Why? Because if the general leaves the Arei Miklat, who could kill him? The Goel Adam. Now, will he vadai be successful in his campaign leading the Jewish people in battle? Maybe not. So he's putting his life in jeopardy. He may be saving someone else's life. Maybe he's not saving someone's life. So the fact that the halacha says that a general of the Jewish people cannot leave the Arei Mikla to save someone's life is a raya that, not like the Yerushalmi, is a raya you're not allowed to risk your life to save someone else's life. So even though the Yerushalmi says you're allowed to put yourself in danger, you're obligated to put yourself in danger to save someone else's life, this Bavli clearly argues on the Yerushalmi, and the Bavli holds you're not allowed to risk your life to save someone else's life. That's why the general cannot leave the Arei Mikla to save life, because he might not save someone else's life, and he's definitely risking his own life. But Marv Rabbi said we're going to explore a new reason, really an incredible reason, why it is that we hold, based on the Gemara, that if someone is in the Arei Miklat and he has the opportunity to save the Jewish people, he is not allowed to leave. So we gave two reasons. One is, he can leave, he just has to go back. That's a Cheshek Shloimei. And the Ar Sameach writes in Hilchos Reitzeach, the reason he's not allowed to leave, because you're not allowed to risk your life to save someone else's life. He's allowed to leave for what?
If he's coming to Basin to testify,
right.
does Basin send him here?
I believe so, yeah.
That's not such a risk.
Oh, you mean to leave?
Leave to testify and then go back.
No. I thought you meant to for this case.
The first time he goes, he has Shmir.
Right. No. It sounds like not. Yeah. You want to testify? I don't think he's obligated to testify. I don't think he's mechuyev to testify. He could say, I don't want to. He's also allowed to protect his own life. But that's going to be quite a story. The guy's leaving to,
What if the Gold of MMH is dead?
What if he's dead? Then we're going to make a kelmali for him on his yard site. And we'll give tikkun for him.
So there's no concern when...
So then he could go. Oh, no, he's still not allowed to leave.
Still not allowed, yeah.
You're not allowed to leave. You're stuck. Right. He's saying whatever. It's a case where everybody's dead. Okay, Marv Rabbi Sai. We look at this week's Parsha, Parshas Seitzei. We mentioned there's 74 mitzvahs, and if you look at the mitzvahs and the order of the Chumash, if you don't mind passing me a Chumash for a moment. The Psukim say as follows. The Parsha begins, you go out to war, and you see in the battle, you see Isha Yifas Tayar. So technically, you're allowed to take her, because Lo Dibra Torah Ela Keneged Yetzirah. But after that, we have the Parsha of two wives, and one of them you hate. And then after that, we have the Parsha of what? The Ben Saro Moira. And after that, we have the topic of someone who commits a capital offense. And Rashi says, what are all these four Parshas got to do with each other? And Rashi says, because even though you're allowed to take the Isha Yifas Tayar, not recommended, you're going to marry her, you're going to eventually hate her, she's going to be disgusting to you, you're going to have a bad child, he's going to be, he's going to go off, and you're going to have Yisurim from him, and then ultimately, you're going to commit a capital offense, and you're going to be in big trouble. So here, what happened to this poor guy? All he did was he was fighting in the battlefield. He's defending the Jewish people. He saw a woman that excited him. He didn't have to take her, but he took advantage of a kula. And the first thing he does is he asked a rabbi who's mekel, and the rabbi gave him a heter. Fine, that's the first thing. What's it so bad? The next thing is he can't get along with his wife. The next thing is he doesn't have nachas from the children. And by the end of the day, he's killing people. He's chayv misa. That's how the parsha begins. Then the Parsha takes a turn. The Parsha talks about oxen. And the Parsha says, and it's talking about somebody's walking down the road and he sees a bird with a nest. And after that, it talks about somebody who builds a new house. And then after that, it talks about somebody planting a field. And then after that, it talks about somebody making tzitzis. Also random. And again, Chazal identified, none of this, the sequence is not random. There are patterns in this world. There are directions in this world. If you start being lenient and you start taking advantage, you start violating, you're going to violate more. You're going to be nichshel and you're going to sin big time. That's the way this world works. There are patterns. You can never stay in one direction. We always know either you're going up or you're going down. But from this week's Parsha we see there are directions in this world. This world is a motorized escalator. That once you take a kula, you're going to end up sinning. You're going to end up sinning more. You're going to end up sinning big time. On the other hand, here you have a guy, he does a little tiny mitzvah. He passes by a bird's nest, and he takes 2 minutes of time, and he takes the eggs, and he shoos away the mother. Then what happens is the Torah says, you know what? You do a small mitzvah, I'm going to give you a new house. And you're going to make a fence. What did the guy do already? He built a fence. He paid $1,000 to build a fence. Big deal. How do you say fence? A ma'aka. Or if you want to sound yeshivish, how do you say it? A maika. A maika, right? I don't know where the yud comes from, but that's how you say it if you want to sound like, you want to sound like a lamdin. Also like an amaretz, but it's ma'aka, yeah? Ma'aka. Anyway, and then we're talking about somebody who makes an orchard. All of a sudden the guy has an orchard. Why does he have an orchard? Because there are patterns in this world. Says Rebbe Sham, if you do the mitzvah of kan sipar, I'm going to give you the opportunity of building a house to be mekayim another mitzvah, namely, you're going to build a makkah. And then after you build a makkah, I'm going to give you the opportunity to have an orchard, and you're not going to plant klayim. And you know what? If you have an orchard, I'm going to give you animals, and you're not going to plow them b'klayim. And you know what? If you have an orchard, I'm going to give you nice clothing, you're going to make tzitzis. What is this principle called? Says Rashi, mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah. Look at Rashi. Rashi says in number 11. First Rashi says, Smichus ha-parshiyos. We learn from here that if you marry the Yifas Toya, you're going to have a Ben Saru Moira, and you're not going to kill him, he's going to go off the derech. He's going to be over Averis, he's going to be Chayiv Misa. But you're going to, if you're Mekayim in the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan, you're going to be Mekayim in the mitzvah, you're going to get a Bayis Chadash, you're going to be Mekayim in the mitzvah Makkah. Why? Mitzvah, Goyreres, mitzvah. And what we want to discuss very briefly is, what does mitzvah, Goyreres, mitzvah mean? Why does one mitzvah pull along another mitzvah? Why? How does it work? What is the svara of mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah? How does it operate? Why? Just because I gave 25 cents to tzedakah, so now I'm going to have an opportunity to what? Do bikar chaylim, then I'm going to have an opportunity to go to another shir. What does one thing have to do with the other? So we're going to learn a few explanations and a few rationales. Some of them will be al pi seichel, al pi reasoning, normal human reasoning, and then we're going to learn some supernatural reasons for mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah. Let's begin with Rabbeinu Yoina. Rabbeinu Yoina in Pirkei Avos, Parak Daled, Mishnah Beis, quotes Ben Azai. Ben Azai is the Baal HaMemra of mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah. Look at number 8. Ben Azai Yoimer, Haveratz lemitzvah kala kivachamura shemitzvah goyreres mitzvah. One mitzvah draws another one. By the way, we already had that concept. Be careful in a small mitzvah like a great mitzvah earlier in Parak Beis. So why do we have to repeat it again in Parak Daled? Says Rabbeinu Yoina, you know what it means, mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah? In Parak Beis it was saying, try to be careful to do every mitzvah because you never know. There's no such thing as a small mitzvah. Every mitzvah is valuable. But now in Parak Daled, Rabbeinu Yoina says, Ben Azai is coming to teach me that there's a very simple program for mitzvah, goyreres, mitzvah. So I heard about a gentleman who was completely out of shape. And every year, by the end of the spring, he's able to run a 5-mile dash. How? He wakes up the first morning and he runs 100 feet, which is nothing. The next day, he runs 110 feet. The next day, he runs 120 feet. The next day, he runs 130 feet. Until ultimately, he runs 5 miles like it's nothing. Why? Now, if he would have started by 100 feet and the next day he went to 5 miles, then we would have to pick him up the floor. Right? It's impossible. But if you're doing something that you have resistance to, you could always just go that little extra bit and it really won't make such a big difference. Here's a guy, he's not interested in davening. Not a shachris, not a mincha, not a marav. It's much more comfortable to sit home on your couch and stare at your phone the whole day, going from one nonsensical item to the next. It's much easier. He doesn't want to go out to minyan. So, what do we tell the guy? We say, Rabbi Yid, go to shachris on a Monday, Thursday, on a bahab. It's an hour and a half. The guy will never come back again. So we tell the guy, go out to a mincha on Tu B'Shvat when there's no tachnun. So, right? It's a 10-minute thing. It's a 10-minute thing. He says, not a big deal. You know what? I could get to the show in a few minutes. It's on my corner. I'll go out to the mincha. There's no tachnun that day, and I'll go home. Then we say, Rabbi Yid, try out a mincha maybe with the tachnun. So he tells, okay, not a big deal. It's only an extra 20 minutes with the tachnan. No, just joking, right? It's only an extra 1 minute with the tachnan. Then we say, Rabbi Yid, if you were able to go out for mincha, Marav is only 1 extra minute. Then we say, why don't you try a shachris on a Tuesday in Chodesh Nisan? There's nothing, right? It's only 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and we slowly build him up. A person has to get used to doing things that he's resistant to. The concept of mitzvah gereres mitzvah is when you do one small mitzvah that you really didn't want to do, that you're not in the mood of doing, that you'd rather remain in inertia, that you'd rather not give up of yourself. Once you're able to do it in a small way, it's easier to take another smaller step, and then from there for another small step, until ultimately you're able to accomplish all the mitzvahs in the Torah. That's the simple pshat in mitzvah goyreres mitzvah. Look at number 14. However, Rabbi Yosef Giktilia, who is the author of the Shari Oira, one of the classic svarim of Kabbalah, that Rizal highly recommended the Sefer Shari Oira. In fact, there's a story brought in the introduction of the Sefer Charedim that Rabbi Yosef Giktilia once had a dream. And in the dream, they were weighing in the Shamayim his mitzvahs and his averos, and they were putting a mitzvah on the right-hand side of the scale and an avera on the left-hand side of the scale. And it came out 50-50, exactly 50-50. And he woke up in a cold sweat. He ran to put on his tefillin, and he recovered. Yeah? So that's Rabbi Yosef Giktilia. He says a very interesting thing. He says, mitzvahs are like a ladder. But not like the kind of ladder that we're used to seeing. Like a motorized ladder, where when you step on the first rung, it automatically, electronically lifts you up to the second rung, and to the third rung, and to the fourth rung. In other words, the mitzvos are, so to speak, a pulley system, where they're all connected to each other. Like an escalator ladder. And he brings a few very interesting rayas to this. What are the rayas? It says, Me'emosai karna shema b'shachris. When do we say shema in the morning? Mishayakir ben tcheles l'lavan. When you could tell the difference between blue wool and white wool. You know what we learned from here? That tcheles, tzitzis, is the ladder and the rung to kriya shema. If you want to know, how could a person be zoicha to be mekayim in the midst of shema? What do you need to do to have the privilege to say shema? Be mekayim tzitzis. Tzitzis is the rung that electronically lifts you up to Kriya Shema. In other words, not just a symbol, it's not just a trigger, that you know when you're chayiv in Shema, when you could recognize the different colors of tzitzis. No, the mitzvahs are sort of connected to each other. One mitzvah raises you up to the next. The mitzvah of tzitzis raises you up to Shema. What does Shema raise you up to? All the mitzvahs, because the pasuk says, Uri'isem oisoi, uzchartem es kol mitzvahs Hashem. Okay. On the other hand, when it comes to averos, it's the same way. It says, Al yahar adam b'yoyim v'yavi lidei tuma b'layla. Don't have an improper thought during the day, and a person will come to impurity at night. Meaning, a smaller avera of a improper, immodest thought could lead you to something more severe. So from here we learn the mitzvahs are like this electronic system, that when you're mekayim one, it raises you to the next. And you're mekayim the next, it raises you even higher. That's how the Rebbe Shalom set up the system, that the mitzvahs are like a sulam. The Chassid Yavitz, Rabbi Yosef Yavitz, one of the great of the Gedolim of the Gerushay Sfarad, he says an amazing idea, and the Maral, in his commentary to Pirkei Avos, echoes this idea. And that is, I have a question. This handsome young man over here, let's say I go to him and I grab his arm. I grab his arm. Am I only grabbing his arm? No, I'm grabbing him. Because he's one entity. I'm not just taking your hand. I'm taking your whole guf. All the mitzvahs are chativa achas. They're one unit. There's one corpus of Torah's Hashem. The Torah of Hashem is one unit. Well, how do we know that? Torah is gematria what? 611. To indicate that the all 611 mitzvahs are one entity. When you do one mitzvah, what are you doing? You're grabbing onto the whole Torah. Mitzvah gereres mitzvah. Once you've grabbed onto that entity, in effect what you've done is, you've embraced the entirety of the Torah. You took everything. You didn't just take that mitzvah. You've taken everything. Now I'm going to tell you a supernatural pshat of the Vilna Gaon. You see two people on the street, and they're standing next to each other, and they're there for a half hour. And what are they doing? You don't see, they're not eating, they're not conducting any mitzvahs, they're not doing any business. And you look very carefully, what are they doing on that street corner? And you see, their mouths are moving. Says the Gemara, why would anybody sit on a corner or at a table and talk to somebody else? For what? For what purpose? What pleasure are you getting? What are you doing? They're not getting olam haba, and they're not getting olam hazeh. They're getting any pleasurable sensation? Why do people speak dvarim b'telim? Says the Gemara, it is the highest form of insanity. Talking is a type of insanity. It's lunacy. It's pure lunacy. Why do people do it? Says the Gemara in his commentary to Mishlei, an amazing idea. Sometimes you see Gedolim, you wonder, how did Rabbi Moshe learn Shulchan Aruch 400 times? I was in Australia, I met my good friend Rav Moshe Dannenbaum. He told me he met someone who saw the inside of Rav Moshe's Shulchan Aruch where there were lines, 400 lines, where Rav Moshe would mark off how is it humanly possible to do that? It's like, how do these Gedolim accomplish so much? Like they're possessed, and the answer is they are. They're possessed. Sometimes you see people, they can't stop talking. It's like there's a dibuk in them. And the answer is, there is. Says the Vilna Gaon, mitzvah goreres mitzvah, avera goreres avera. Meaning as follows, that whenever you do something big, either good or bad, the Rebbeinu Shem creates a spirit that will not be satisfied until you do that thing a little bit more. And it will not give you respite and menuchas hanefesh and peace of mind until you accomplish that again in a greater fashion. So if you do a mitzvah, now what's the greatest mitzvah in the Torah? Talmud Torah. When you learn for an hour, God gives you a ruach that does not rest until you do what you did again in a greater fashion. And then more and more and more. Mitzvah, goireres mitzvah. Says the Gemara, if Talmud Torah is the biggest mitzvah, what's the biggest avera? Dvarim b'telim. Dvarim b'telim. Did you see what that guy served at his chasana last night? Who cares what he served at his chasana like that? Why would you talk about that? Did you see what kind of flowers they paid for at the wedding? Why would you spend 10 minutes of your life? Instead of full suicide, you're doing a 10-minute suicide. You're destroying your life for 10. Why would you talk about that? What benefit does it have? You're not making money. You're not getting pleasure. Do something with your life. Adar olam haba, adar olam hazeh. But why would you talk? The answer is because you're possessed. Who are you possessed by? A demon. A ruach, says the Gemara. That because you spoke dvarim b'telim once, you now have a ruach that you will not be satisfied, you have no rest, you have no menuchas hanefesh until you commit the biggest avera in the Torah a little bit longer, and that is empty chatter. Say, what's wrong with empty chatter? Because if Talmud Torah is the greatest mitzvah, Devarim b'telim, which is Hefach HaTorah, is the biggest avera. That's mitzvah goreres mitzvah, avera goreres avera. It's a supernatural phenomenon, says the Gemara. You want to take a look at it inside? Let's read it inside, because you don't believe me. Okay, look at the Gemara. The Gemara says, Neged, number 18. Neged habale latzain. V'yoshvei kronos. Speaking to those who scoff and sit in the corners. She'ein lahem tavas oilam hazeh. There's no desire for it. Ela halatzain chamdu lahem. They just want scoffing. You know why? Ki rucham lo'inacha. Their spirit does not rest. V'lo shakata, and does not have respite. Ad sheyedabru divrei halatzain, until they speak words of scoffing. Umizeh lohem nachas ruach. And only then do they have nachas. V'hatam. Mimnei shebechol davar sha'adam oisa. Anything a person does, noitzin loy ruach mimarim. They create a spirit on high. V'hu ha'mesayeya oisoi lasois oi dvarim ka'ela, that assists you to do this again. V'zeh haruach, and the spirit einoi nach, does not rest. V'shaked ad she'oisoi dvarim ka'ela, until you do more things like this. V'unena mehem. Umizeh yesh lenachas ruach. Hein b'dvar mitzvah or b'dvar avera, v'zeu avera gares avera, u'mitzvah gares. You see a guy, he cannot stop chattering all day long. What's wrong with the guy? Is the guy possessed? Yes. He possessed himself. You see a guy, and he's like a veritable fountain of Torah. How does he do it? The answer is, he has a ruach, an insatiable ruach, that will not be satisfied until he continues his path.
Does this apply to men or women?
Why? You think women have a challenge in this?
No, I'm asking you. You're a rabbi.
You know, this is a men's shiur, and I don't want to comment beyond the scope of the particular audience that we have in front of us. Okay. Okay. Marv Rabbi. So we've explained three rationales of mitzvah gereres mitzvah. Number one, Rabbeinu Yoina, there's a svara that you slowly train and condition yourself to do things that you don't really want to do until you build up the stamina to fulfill all the mitzvahs. Number two, mitzvah gereres mitzvah. We have an idea that the mitzvahs are a ladder, an electronic ladder, and one mitzvah lifts you up to be mekayim the next mitzvah. We have a third concept that all the mitzvahs are one entity. They're all one brand of DNA. And once you grab hold of one, you're attached to the whole entity. And then finally we have the Vilna Gaon's pshat, that there's a supernatural concept, maybe a Kabbalistic concept, but this is what the Gemara tells us, that when you do something, God gives you a desire and a spirit to do it again. But Marv Rabbi side, there is another important element of mitzvah gereres mitzvah, which is very relevant. Number one, to this particular phenomenon. Number two, to Chodesh Elul, and finally to the concept of why somebody who kills b'shoigeg can never leave the Arei Miklat. Here you have a guy. He builds a house. V'yasisa ma'kel legagecha. He needs to make a fence. We don't want to put any blood on you. You know why? Why would any blood be on this guy's hands? He just built a house. Because the one who is falling will fall. What do we call a guy who fell? Someone who's falling. Rashi wants to know, why do we call a guy who fell someone who's actively falling? Rashi says because the guy was going to fall anyway. If somebody falls, God decreed that he should fall. He was already decreed Misheshes Yemei Bereshis that he was going to fall on this and this date. So the question is, you invite someone to your home, and let's say somebody didn't put up a fence, and your friend was walking on your roof and he fell down, and now he comes to you with tinus, why didn't you put up a fence? So you just say to him, you're a kaifer be'ikr. What do you want from my life? I didn't put up a fence. God decreed that because you did X, Y, and Z, you were going to fall. In fact, God decreed you were going to fall before you were created. What do you want from my life? So what? I didn't put up a fence. You were going to fall anyway. No, Rashi says. Which means he could say back to you, yes, I was going to fall anyway. But where was I going to fall? Because God needed someone to hinge this falling on. God was looking for one good man to raise his hand and say, God says, hey, I need someone to fall. Who wants to be the guinea pig, to be responsible, who I could hinge this falling on? So the guy says to his friend, you raised your hand and you told God you want to be the person who's responsible for somebody's injury. So I never volunteered for that. Yeah! When you didn't put up your fence, you raised your hand and you told God, I want to be somebody who is eligible to cause somebody else's injury. No, but I was going to fall anyway, the guy said. Yeah, but God needed a shliach. And what happened was God had a job interviews for people. God put up a sign. Who would like to be the shliach to bring about someone else's injury? And when you didn't put up the fence, what you did was you submitted your resume to be the agent, to be the instrument, to bring about somebody's injury. Yeah, but it's going to happen anyway. Yeah, but God always needs a shliach. It's that way l'chayv, and it's that way l'schus. Meaning, you ready for this concept? God has a lot of great zechuyos to distribute. But you can't just do a zechus. You think you could just go around being mekayim mitzvahs? There's so many extenuating circumstances in this world that prevent us from being mekayim mitzvahs. So God announces, Olam hazeh, all you people down there, I have many great opportunities, but I need someone to submit their resume to say, yes, I want to be a shliach, to be God's instrument, to be mekadeshem shamayim. So how do you become eligible to be zoiche, to do great things for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You have to be a zakai. So how do you become a zakai? Do a small mitzvah. When you do a small mitzvah, what you're doing is, you're saying, Rebbe Shem, I'm a zakai. I am now eligible that the next time you have a big zechus, I want to be the guy. So now when the Rebbe Shem has a big thing to bring about, the Rebbe Shem says, who should I choose? Because the truth is, we can't do mitzvahs. There's no individual who has the capacity to do a mitzvah, because Rebbe Shem does everything. So why does somebody get reward? You can only get reward for choosing to do a mitzvah. But at the end of the day, who actually gets the zechus? The Rebbe Shem has to be mezakeh you. You can't just do mitzvahs. You have to have the zechus to do mitzvahs. So one of the aspects of mitzvah goreres, mitzvah is megalgalin zechus ayidei zakai. Which means, the Rebbe Shem has many great opportunities for all of us. The only thing is, we don't have to do them. We have to be eligible to be agents, a pawn in the hand of Hashem, for Hashem to carry out the zechus al yadeinu. So we know that if somebody doesn't put up a fence, chas v'shalom, they're raising their hand, they're saying, Rebbe Shem, I know people are going to die anyway. I want to be the guy. I want to be him. I want to be the shliach. Chas v'shalom. On the other hand, the Rebbe Shem has many grand opportunities. But you have to be zoicha. So you want to be zoicha? Mitzvah, goireres mitzvah. You do a mitzvah, now you're a zakai. I have a question. Somebody harms you. So the guy says, what do you... you go over to your friend on Yom Kippur. You say, I'm very surprised. You hurt me during the year. Why didn't you ask me for mechila? You tell the guy, you're a kaifer baker. I harmed you. Whatever you're supposed to get, Rebbe Shem decreed you're supposed to get. Why do you have to ask someone for mechila? What's the lum? You're asking him, I'm so sorry that I did a different avera, that I became a chayiv, that now the Rebbe Shem used me as his shliach and instrument to cause you tzar. Why are you allowed to have tinus on somebody? Why do you have the right to demand that he ask you to be moicha? Because the guy... I have a question. You go home, and your wife cooks you a supper. Your mother cooks you supper. You eat it, and you don't say anything. So you're an ingrate. Why do you say thank you? Because God decreed that I should eat the chicken tonight. You didn't do anything. Why do you say thank you? Because they're the shliach. They did a mitzvah that Hashem allowed them to be a shliach to do the mitzvah. In other words, you're not thanking someone for doing. Nobody does anything. People are just pawns in the hands of Hashem. You have to be zoicha. You have to be zoicha to do mitzvahs. We're going to go through Yom Noraim, and most think that at the end of Yom Kippur, I think I got off all my averos. It was a successful high holiday season. You didn't even begin. Rabbeinu Yoina writes in number 24 that about tshuva, which all of us should aspire to be that, it's not enough that Hashem just blot out our sins. We want Hashem to want us, to be entreated by us, to desire us. Imagine somebody insults you, hurts you. You know, they make a chasana and they send you a disinvitation. Please don't come to my chasana. And you're really insulted. And then he calls you Erev Yom Kippur. And this is a guy you would go out to the pizza store every Friday with. And he calls you Erev Yom Kippur and he says, please be meichel me, I was foolish. Fine, machalach, machalach, machalach. The Friday after Sukkot, he says, no, you want to come out to pizza? No, I don't want to look at you. I said, I don't understand. I thought you were meichel me. Yeah, I was meichel you, but I don't like you. I'm meichel you. But you're not my friend anymore. I don't hold it against you. I don't have any hard feelings. But I'm not really interested in your company. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, just because God forgives us, that's only half of it. Don't we want the Rebbeinu Shalom to want us? Don't we want the Rebbeinu Shalom to want our tefillah, to want our mitzvahs, to desire our mitzvahs, to give us opportunities to do mitzvahs? So just because the Rebbeinu Shalom forgave us, but maybe we're not that worthy shliach anymore, be'einav, to carry out zechusim. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, look at these beautiful words. V'oid yispalel ba'al tshuva el Hashem. The ba'al tshuva should pray to God, limchois ka'av peshav, to wipe out and blot out his sins. V'sheyach bo itzbay, that the Rebbeinu Shalom should want him. V'yirtzehu, and desire him. V'ye'aser lo, and be entreated by him. Ka'asher im lo yichata, as if he didn't sin. We want the Rebbeinu Shalom to say, hey, Rabbi Yid, you're eligible again. You're eligible again for greatness. I found this Aruch HaShulchan. This is mamish, literally one of the most astounding things I ever heard. The Aruch HaShulchan says, why can't this Jew leave the Orei Miklat? All of Klal Yisrael needs him to save their skin. He's a general. He's like Yoav ben Tzruya. Why can't he leave the Orei Miklat to save Klal Yisrael? Says the Aruch HaShulchan, if he killed B'shoigeg, that means God used him as an agent and a shliach to bring about the death of somebody. He then is somebody who has submitted his resume to be the instrument to bring about tragedy. Do you think he'll have the siyata d'shmaya to leave the Orei Miklat, act as a general, and save the Jewish people? You're right! If we knew he would be successful in saving lives, he'd be allowed to leave the Orei Miklat. But it's highly doubtful that after God used him as an agent to bring about somebody else's demise, that anything good ever would come out from this guy. So you know why he can't leave the Orei Miklat? Because he won't save lives anyway. He obviously won't be successful. Because since Megalgan Zechus Ayidei Zakai V'choy V'ayidei Chayiv, he has already established himself as a Chayiv, and in that case, it's highly unlikely that he would be able to be used as a tool and an instrument b'yad Hashem to be somebody eligible to have a great Zechus. That's a Peladik Svara. Can you imagine such a Svara? In other words, to save someone's life, you can't just be a general. You have to have a zechus to save someone's life. You have to be a zakai, and this guy clearly is not a zakai, he's a chayiv. If we knew he would save someone's life, we would let him go. The thing is, we're highly incredulous that he would be successful in saving someone's life. Says Rav Daniel Movshavitz, one of the most important tefillos that we're going to daven during the period of the Aseret Yimei Tshuva. Yes, Zachreinu l'chaim, kasveinu b'sefer achayim, kasveinu b'sefer slicho mechila, kasveinu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala. But we ask Rebbeinu Shalom, Avinu Malkeinu, kasveinu b'sefer zechuyos. Not that Rebbeinu Shalom do mitzvahs for me. Not Rebbeinu Shalom, don't forget to write it down. Rebbeinu Shalom, I know that in Shamayim you're looking for a few good men. You want people who are eligible shluchim through which you could carry out zechuyos. Ribbon Shalom, please let me be such a person. I want to be a zakai. I would like to be somebody who you deem roi to be eligible for greatness to carry out zechusim al yadehem. That's what it means, kasveinu b'sefer zechuyos. Because you can't just do mitzvahs. People think you could just do mitzvahs. You have to know if you're zoichet to do a mitzvah, then you're a zakai. Ribbon Shalom, I want to be that zakai who you deem eligible to be your shliach to carry out zechusim. And we hope we're mispalel, Ribbon Shalom, Mekabel all of our tefillos, and as Kasveinu, He inscribe all of us b'sefer zechuyah. Shkayach. If anybody wants to purchase, there's a new sefer available. It's from Artsco. If anybody wants to purchase the new sefer, it's available.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.